LMS webpage as soon as you get it hooked up. Thank you. I'm Professor Mary Jo Eister. I'm the teacher of the Civil Practice Internship and the Judicial Clerkship Clinic, as well as an in-house clinical program. I'm going to be joined in a short time by Professor Lisa Smith, who teaches the Criminal Externship Clinic. And what we want to talk about is, specifically, we want to talk about the externship clinical opportunities that are going to be available for the summer. But I also want to give you a big picture so that you'll understand how this all fits together. Can I just get a show of hands of how many of you are first-year students? That's what I thought. Okay. And how many of you have previously attended any clinical information meetings? That's also what I thought. Okay, so I'm going to start with some very basic information to give you an overview of what we're talking about with some of the terminology, so you really know what your options are going to be. I'll also mention I have Gerard Anderson here from Financial Aid, and he's going to be giving you a little bit of information about some of the financial aspects of summer work. And I think, is anyone here from the Career Center? Do you want to put yourselves up here, or if you're trying to hide back their attention? If you want to, come on up here. And the Career Center might be, depending on the questions that you have, which I'll take at the end, or we'll all take at the end, I might need to draw on other people's expertise because I certainly don't have all the answers. Okay. First of all, I'm talking about externships, and what I mean by that is these are the clinical opportunities that are essentially exist outside of the law school. We have law school courses, the judicial, the civil, and the criminal externship clinics, through which you may obtain credit for these experiences, but the experiences take place in offices outside the law school. So if it's civil, for example, you might be placed, or you might find a place that rather in an office like the New York Stock Exchange or a legal services office. If it's criminal, you might be placed in the Brooklyn DA's office or in legal aid criminal defense office. This is Professor Smith, who's just joined us. And if it's judicial, you could be placed in a federal district court chambers, or a state supreme court, or a housing court, or family court chambers. So those are the externship programs that we have available in the fall semester, spring semester, and the summer semester. For each of these clinical experiences, there are basic requirements, basic expectations, and they're all 3-credit programs that are given pass-fail grades, but so they do appear on your transcript, but they don't affect your GPA. So if you are interested in taking advantage of the clinical programs in the summer semester, it means that you're going to follow some similar procedures regardless of which of the 3 you're interested in, and you will enroll in summer school, pay tuition for summer school, and get 3 credits for the clinical programs. Parenthetically, if you are enrolled in summer school, you can also take non-clinical programs. It's one fee. I don't know what exactly it is this summer, but it's one fee that I think allows you to take up to 7 credits. So you can take another course or 2 other courses, I guess, as well. Are most courses 2 credits or 42? Okay. Those are the externship clinics, and predominantly that's what we have available in the summer. However, there undoubtedly will be some in-house clinical programs available in the summer, and a lot of in-house clinical programs available in the fall and spring of your 2nd and 3rd years. So let me just talk a little bit about what those are and how they differ. Professor Smith and I both teach in-house clinical programs as well. So based on our experiences and other experiences, here are some of the differences. When I'm teaching my in-house clinical students, they work in the office across the street at One Borough Place under my direct supervision. I meet with them. We conference cases together. They meet with the clients in the clinic office across the street, and I teach the seminar. So I'm very involved and engaged in the work that they're doing and very aware of what their cases entail. Professor Smith teaches the prosecutor's clinic, which is an in-house clinic, so she directly supervises those students. So in addition to having the externship programs that we supervise, we have in-house clinics as well. Those 2 in-house programs will not be offered in the summer, but there will be some programs that will be offered in the summer. I'm not 100% sure which ones. Do you know? I think elder law, I'm sure will be offered in the summer, and children's law, or children's law will probably be offered in the summer. As to the others, I'm not certain. Those decisions will probably be made at a later time, partly depending on what the caseloads look like and how active the cases are going to be. But we have a very, very wide range of clinical opportunities available in the law school. And in probably March or April, we'll be holding a big information meeting where all of those in-house clinical professors will be here, standing up here in the front of the room, talking to you about what those in-house clinics offer, what the requirements are, the application procedures, and so forth, so that you should be sort of thinking ahead about not just what you're going to be doing this summer, but what other clinical opportunities you might want to take advantage of during the entire time that you're in the law school. The clinical programs are all described in the as a school bulletin, and also on the web page, which eventually I think I'm going to be able to have access to. Right, Ivan? You're shaking your head. Huh?
This connection is not working at all.
Dandy. I thought we had wireless over here. I see. Okay. Sore point. Sorry. I didn't know. I work across the street. Okay. In the event that we eventually have access here, I'll show you where you can find this clinical information. If for some reason we don't succeed, you'll go on the Brooklyn Law School webpage, and through exploration you will discover where all the clinical information is located, and you'll find it yourselves, because I know you're probably all very good at doing that. Okay. The reason that we're starting this process for summer right now, like 2 days after the semester starts for the spring, and you may be wondering if we've lost our minds, and we have, actually. It's important to get those applications out there quickly, because what happens in the summer in New York is that students from all over the country converge in New York City to do various kinds of internships. First of all, they may be students whose families live in New York, but also it's just a hot place to be in, and there are a lot of opportunities available, so it attracts a lot more applicants. So for the judicial internships, it's really important for us to get those applications out quickly. I know that some of you, with the assistance and advice and urging, are we on?
Yeah.
Thank you. Of the Career Center have already probably sent out applications to some of the district court judges, and some of you have started that process. I know some of you have already secured internships for the summer, and that's great. Many of you haven't started the process yet. That's fine, but we want to get it started as quickly as possible. So applications are going to be due next week, Thursday. I think it's the 29th. And I know for judicial, I'm going to start to get those moving as quickly as I can. Are you going to move yours as quickly?
No, because, in the criminal justice agencies across the city, they're not prepared in January to figure out exactly what they're doing in the summer. So I want you to get your applications in, but you may not hear from me for about another month until the agencies are prepared to take on your applications. The only thing I want to mention is that if you're interested in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the summer, that you should do through our placement office, because the U.S. Attorney's Office has its own summer program, and our Career Services Office has all the information. So if you're interested in working in the Eastern or the Southern District in the summer, go across the street to Career Services, and they'll take care of it for you.
Is that still open?
I know the U.S. Attorney's Office did interview for positions for this summer, but there's also a grant opportunity that's, I think, due for first year February 27th, and that was on our website. The information is also.
Okay. The way that the judicial and the criminal externship clinics the application and placement procedure is pretty much the same for those two programs, and we'll both describe what that is. But here's how it works in general. We get the applications, we review them, we see what your preferences are, we also take a look at what your qualifications are, and how they match up with what we know the various offices and judges are looking for. And then we select students to be referred to one office, usually at a time. So I'm not going to get your application and send it to 50 judges. I can't do it, I don't have the staff to do it, and that's not what they expect from us. So that's not what we do. So those of you, for example, who have decided to try to find internships with federal judges for the summer and may have sent out mass mailings to every judge in the Southern and Eastern District, that's your prerogative, but that's not what we're going to be doing. So when you go through the clinic office, Professor Smith and I will be basically trying to match you up with an appropriate placement where we think you have a good shot at being selected, at being accepted. I don't have any guarantees, though. You don't either, do you? Or do you? That they will, that the office will take a certain number of students. Okay, so even though we're trying to match as well as we can, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to be selected just because we sent your application to a particular judge or a particular office in the criminal justice system. You treat it as you would treat any job interview situation, and that is that you're going to undoubtedly be interviewed, and you're going to make, hopefully make a good impression and be given an offer. One thing you need to know about judicial that sets it apart from the other programs is, and this applies only to judicial and only when we are the ones who refer you to the office. In other words, not the ones you solicit on your own. If I refer you to one of the judicial placements, to one of the judges, if you agree to go to the interview, you are required to accept the placement if it's offered. You cannot have an interview with the judge and then reject a placement if it's offered. The reason for that rule, which pre-exists even my involvement in the clinic, is that the judges sort of look for a little bit like a quid pro quo, like we're sending them a certain number of students. They're usually agreeable to interviewing the students, and they don't want to waste their time. It's the same reason we can't send them 25 or 30 resumes. They don't have the time for it. So we try to match you up. If you don't want to go to a particular judge, you see that's where I sent you. You can withdraw. You don't have to go to the interview, but if you go, you have to take the placement. You want to say anything about criminal placements? All right. Okay. It's important to know a couple of things about the judicial process, the judicial placement process. First of all, federal district courts and the magistrate courts are very, very selective. I can't say how selective because it depends on the pool of applicants, not just from Brooklyn, but from all other schools. However, in general, they're looking for GPAs that are around 3.5 or higher for federal district court and magistrate court. That's just generally what they're looking for. They're also going to be looking at writing grades pretty closely because there's always going to be a lot of research and writing in the federal court clerkships. The state court clerkships offer a more varied experience. Some of them may be more trial experience, sitting with a judge in trials, in hearings and motions and calendar calls. In courts like family court or housing court, it may be very different from state Supreme Court. There are a lot of variations in the court system in terms of what kind of experience you're going to get. I ask you on the application to identify what your areas of interest are because in state court in particular, they have specialized dockets. Some judges have only civil dockets. Even within civil, some of them have only matrimonial, some have only commercial cases, others may have mixed dockets, some have criminal, then there's housing court, family court, surrogates court. So there's a lot of specialization. District court, federal court is not like that. Federal court is everything, with the exception of bankruptcy, which is its own court. What else do we need to say about judicial? The experiences in the two court settings, federal versus state, are different in the following significant way that you should be aware of. Sometimes, although the federal district courts are considered to be sort of, great prizes, great opportunities, great sort of, springboards to, it looks great on your resume, you don't necessarily get a lot of interaction with the judges. You get usually a lot more interaction with the judges' law clerks. Typically, the law clerks are the ones who give you assignments, review the assignments, give you feedback, and some judges may spend very little or virtually no time with the interns. Now, sometimes in the summer, you get more time because a lot of the interns will end up spending 5 days a week in the summer, even though we don't require that, and we'll talk about hours later. A lot of the internships will ask you to come in 5 days a week, and so you really get much more involved in all the day-to-day routine in chambers or in the office, and so that can translate into a lot more time with the judge and just a lot more in-depth understanding about what's going on in that office or the chambers. State court judges, again, this is a generalization. It isn't true of all state court judges, but typically they spend a lot more time directly with the students who are interning in chambers. And in addition, their law secretaries or law clerks are often what are called career law clerks, so they're not just there for 1 year or 2 years, they're there for a very long period of time. And so they're very senior, experienced attorneys, not attorneys who are 1 or 2 years out of law school. I don't mean to denigrate the federal court clerks by saying that. They're 1 or 2 years out of law school, but they probably all graduated way up at the top of their classes, otherwise they wouldn't have been selected for these internships, for these clerkships. But nonetheless, they don't have much more experience than a third-year law student because they've just finished law school a year or two before. Why don't you talk about criminal? Because civil's separate, and then we can talk about general stuff. No. You can do that. Yeah.
Okay. In the criminal clinic in the summer, the criminal clinic is run in the fall, the spring, and the summer. So it's important to distinguish a little bit based on really your schedule and what works best for you. So let's say in the summer you have to do 24 hours a week for 7 weeks, okay? Which tells you that really you have to do 3 full days if you decide that you want to work in a criminal justice agency. And one of the important things about that is it tells you you can also get a job. Okay, so if you decide to go through the clinical programs, you could do 3 days working in the clinic for 7 weeks and get the clinical credit and spend the rest of your summer, if it's necessary, right, at a job that pays, whatever it has to be. Obviously it's very hard to get jobs the summer after your first year in the legal field, particularly jobs that pay. So one of the things to consider is you can mix a little bit of legal experience and, if you have to do something that's non-legal because you need to make a certain amount of money when you do the clinical programs. So keep that in mind, it's really just 3 days. In the fall and the spring, you'll be doing 12 to 14 hours a week because it's a longer semester, right? It's 14 weeks. So you'll be doing about a day and a half a week in the fall and the spring as opposed to the summer. Now, one of the things to keep in mind, and in the criminal justice system, we have placements in the DA's offices. I said before that the U.S. Attorney runs its own summer program, so we can place you in the DA's offices and in a huge number of legal defense, different types of legal defense firms through the clinic. And one of the things to keep in mind, though, is that I think that down in the placement office, the DA's offices may also have come because they also run their own summer programs. Now, the summer programs that the DA's offices probably already came and interviewed via OCI, right, are generally speaking 10 weeks, 5 days a week. Sometimes they have a minimal salary attached, sometimes they don't. So you can sort of think about it that way. If you want to do 10 weeks, 5 days a week, you may have already interviewed. How many people here interviewed, actually, for the DA's offices for a summer job? Nobody. Okay. I'll have to find out from the placement office whether the people came, whether the DA's office is interviewed for the summer. I think that there I think they do have opportunities down there. So you should go down to the placement office and find out if you want to work in criminal justice, if they have any opportunities in the district attorney's offices. If they do, and you want to do, like I said, 5 days a week for the summer, then apply through the Career Center. If you want to do just 7 weeks, 3 days a week, apply through the clinic. Of course, as Professor Eister said before, you will have to pay for summer school if you apply through the clinic. There's a seminar attached to the clinic. You need to attend the seminar. To make the summer work better for you, the seminar is just 3 or 4 days right at the beginning of the semester. Basically, okay. So it'll start, it's May 25th? So May 25th is the first day of summer school. When I teach the criminal clinic, it'll probably only be 3 days, like the 25th, the 26th, and the 27th. So if you're planning to do the criminal clinic, plan to be here the 25th, the 26th, and the 27th. So that you don't have to start emailing me, I can't be here on the 25th or the 26th, I'm telling you now. Just plan to be here those 3 days, and that's the entire seminar component for the criminal clinic for the summer. The agencies that are available are very varied on there, and they're on the website. And when we finish this, we'll let you ask individual questions. What you're going to be doing primarily, obviously, is working with attorneys who work in the criminal justice system. So you'll be assigned to assistant district attorneys, you'll be assigned to defense attorneys, you'll be doing, and we have federal defenders, although not, like I said, the federal prosecutors in the summer. So you'll be going to court with them, you'll be interviewing witnesses, you'll second see trials, you'll do research and writing, you'll probably go out to crime scenes, and you'll do motion practice with them. So get a fair amount of experience in the criminal justice system for the, in the amount of time we have for the summer. But again, if it doesn't work out for you, remember we do this in the fall and the spring also. So your options, particularly if you're just finishing your first year, are really very wide open.
And one thing that I didn't say before and connects to the options you'll have in subsequent semesters is that you're permitted to take up to 12 clinical credits during the time you're in law school. And what that basically translates into is 4 semesters of clinics. The in-house clinics are usually 3 credits. I think some of them are 2, but usually they're 3 credits. Often there's a seminar component that may be 2 credits, maybe 1 credit, but that doesn't count towards your 12 credit limit. So think about four semesters, up to 4 semesters of clinics as the limit of what you can take during the time you're in law school. So when I talked, and Professor Smith talks about planning ahead and thinking in terms not just of the summer, but the subsequent semesters, think about those limits as well as what you want to fit into that time frame. In connection with the summer classes, I just want to say the civil practice internship classes are a little bit more extensive. I think the judicial, we don't have specific dates yet, but I just want to reiterate that it's not going to be permissible for someone to contact me and say, well, I want to get credit, but I can't come to class. The answer is going to be no. You must attend these seminars in order to qualify for credit for the summer. So I know the semester starts on May 25th, and I'm assuming that the civil practice classes will be the 25th and 26th, and 25th, 26th, and 27th, I think Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We won't have class on Friday. And June 1st and or June 2nd. It'll be in that time frame. And it'll be scheduled from 3 to 6. I won't use all that time every day, but that's the time I need you to block out. If you decide you want to take other courses this summer, the clinic classes are set up so that they don't conflict with the other classes that are offered in the summer term. Those all start at 6 to 8, 8 to 10, right? So you won't have a conflict there. You may have a little bit of a conflict with your office hours and your internship, but they have to understand that it's required and it's very limited in terms of what that conflict involves, because after those 3 or 4 days, that's it, you're free, and you can spend all day, every day in those settings. The question about hours in the summer, I want to make something clear about when we talk about requirements, what that really means. For clinical credit, you have to do 168 hours of field work for 3 credits. And that translates into 24 hours a week for 7 weeks. That's the duration of the summer semester. However, you will find that some of the judges and some of the offices in the civil clinic, and maybe criminal as well, are going to require that you make a greater time commitment. They may require 40 hours a week. They may require 10 weeks rather than 7 weeks. If you accept a placement in that setting, you must do what they require. And if they require 40 hours a week for 10 weeks, then that's what you have to agree to. You're not going to get additional credit for that time. Conceivably, you will be able to qualify to get some form of compensation for the additional time, the time that exceeds 168 hours. And that's where study could potentially come in. You want to talk about that? Just explain what it is and how they go about it.
Okay. We run a separate summer work study program where you will indeed have to apply for it. The applications are usually out around February 1st. You will need to have filed for financial aid for both this academic year and for next academic year to qualify for it. So that means you need to get your FAFSAs out relatively soon. The school runs a program where, I should back it up. For those people working in a public interest job, the employer is required to pay 25% of your salary. We encourage you to try to talk your summer employer into paying that 25%. However, many of them don't. And the law school has set aside a fairly significant amount of money to pick up that 25% for employers that can't pay the match. Unfortunately, it may not be enough to cover everyone's match everyone who would like the law school to pick up that 25%. We've been pretty fortunate to cover that in past years. Last year it was a bit of a struggle, and the law school really stepped up to the plate and pitched in actually a couple $100,000 to match this money due to 100 more students winding up on summer work study last year than in prior years. So it can be a very expensive program for the law school, but we do our best to really try to make sure that you get summer jobs and that you get some money while working there. Now, the one thing you can't do is you can't be paid while you're getting credit. It's one or the other. You can get the credit or you can get the work study, but you can't get paid for a time where you're receiving academic credit.
But as I said, if you're required by your placement to put in 40 hours a week for 10 weeks, and that's 400 hours over the course of the summer, only 168 hours is required for credit. So the additional hours, if it's otherwise qualified for work study, if the placement is qualified and if you're qualified, you can be compensated. Similarly, sometimes some of these offices have small stipends that they can pay students. And it's the same deal. The excess hours can be compensated, and if that stipend, whatever it is, can be allocated to those hours that exceed 168, then it's not a problem. This bar on being paid and getting credit is imposed by the ABA, so we have absolutely no flexibility on this because it's a very, very clear requirement or a very clear restriction imposed by the ABA.
Also, the feds, as far as work study,
okay.
It's a requirement there. And you also couldn't get a stipend for a period where you're getting work study. Also, it has to be one or the other. You can't
Right.
compensate from 2 sources. Otherwise, someone sitting in financial aid goes to jail.
It goes directly to jail. You were going to add something?
No,
Okay.
please.
Now, I want to talk just briefly about the civil practice internship process, and then I think we're going to try to summarize everything and then take questions. So, now the civil practice internship operates differently, and I guess here's where, in particular, this is going to come in handy. In the civil practice internships, you're going to be responsible for finding your own placement that's qualified for credit. As you can see, we're on the Brooklyn Law School website, and what I did is I clicked on academic programs, and then I clicked on clinical programs, and now I'm going to click on clinical internship placements. And Professor Smith told you that the criminal placements are described here. Click on it correctly. And there's information for students. But what I want to show you, maybe that's what I just did, is the civil placements. Okay. The information is there, but in addition, when you go down here, you get a list of various areas in which you could be seeking an internship. Arts and entertainment, client-centered individual rep, economic development, government litigation. Whoops, what did I do? Stop. All right, let me just show you how I want this to work. It's going to ask you to put in your username. You all know your usernames, right? It's the username you use throughout the law school. And then, it's going to ask you for your password. You should know that as well. And that's going to give you this list. And the reason it is password protected is because, frankly, I spent a lot of time generating this list, and I don't want it to be available to the entire world, including every law student in the United States. So please don't provide this information to people outside the law school because this is for your benefit. Most of these offices have given us additional information, so if you click on one that's like that, you're going to get more information about how the office is structured, what kind of work they do, and other information that's going to be important to you in deciding where you want to send your applications. So you send those application materials to the offices. We have on this website basic information about how to go about sending your application materials out. You should also be working with the Career Center counselors, and I'm sure some of you have. They've all had appointments already, have they? So you'll be working with the Career Center as well if you need assistance in putting together your application. Make sure, I can't stress this enough, if you have any mistakes, your resume, correct them. If you don't have any typographical or spelling errors on your cover letters, if you can improve your writing sample and you know that there were things that should be improved, do it. That's not cheating. That's what professionals do. So it's not going to change the grade you got in the writing, but make sure that everything can be as letter perfect as possible before you send it out. Now, in it, these offices, they're listed here on our website under civil clinic placements, are what we call our pre-approved placements. That means that essentially invariably, once you complete all the appropriate paperwork, these will be approved because we've already reviewed them. We've had students in these settings over a period of time, and we know that they're appropriate settings for credit purposes. But in addition, there are always new offices that come into the system through the Career Center, through EmployerNet. They get calls all the time asking for students, asking for interns who are going to be able to get credit. So if you find another placement that's not on my list that you find through the Career Center or through any other mechanism, the general guidelines are laid out in, I'm going to back up again, in the student manuals, which are online. But what it comes down to is if it's not for profit or government and it's legal work supervised by an attorney and it's not paid, then it will probably be approved for credit. The manuals for all of the programs, civil, judicial, and criminal, are right here online. You can read them, you can download them, you can print them, and you should so that you know what the requirements are. In addition, the application materials are all online. That's why we didn't bring anything with us today. So if you want to submit an application for judicial or for criminal, you're going to print the clinic application. If you want to find a civil placement and then get it approved for credit, you're going to use the request for approval form. You're going to fill out a request for approval. I think there's one for the summer. I'm trying to do this quickly. But there's a request for approval form here somewhere. And here's one for judicial, for civil. I think the one below that is for summer. I can't get this to move, so take my word for it. Oh, there it is. oh, that's the summer enrollment form. You fill out the request for approval, you submit it to the clinic office, and either Professor Smith or I will be reviewing it and making a determination, and then you'll be contacted. The request for approval is required and applies for every civil practice placement. Even if it's on the pre-approved list, you still have to fill out the request for approval. For judicial and for criminal, you need to do the request for approval only if you have found the placement on your own, not if we have placed you. If you went out and solicited a lot of different opportunities and found one, and you want to get it approved, if criminal or civil, you submit a request for approval, and it's the same process that I described. We review it, we contact you, or you get a letter saying your application request is approved, or you get a letter saying it's not and stating the reasons. Yeah, I just want to. I want to sort of look at this and see if, I think that's everything. Do you have anything to add? Because from the Career Center, is there anything else that I didn't talk about in terms of finding opportunities?
I have one question though, because I get a lot from students who have a restricted sort of summer based on other commitments, study abroad, things like that. Are there any placements that you know of? I know like the judges are on an individual basis. Some want 5 days a week, and some are going to say come in 3 days a week. But do you know of any that will allow a student to work, for example, 7 that you know are flexible, and 7 weeks is appropriate with this particular employer? They can start as soon as finals are over and leave end of July, or start of July and in August.
You're talking about any placements, not just judges, not just.
Do you know?
I mean, because it actually doesn't matter. Because the answer is no, I don't know. And that's not to say there aren't.
Right. It's
But
just
what I
unusual.
found was when I tried to survey that information, it changed from year to year. From the same person would tell me one thing one year and another thing another year.
No, but on the criminal side, they understand that we have a summer semester, so yes, you can work 7 weeks in most of the criminal justice agencies.
That the duration is something that you need to explore with the supervisor, the clerk, whoever is interviewing you at the time that you're interviewing. If you have questions about that ahead of time, we can try to find out to some extent. But if it's judicial, or you should put that on your application if it's judicial, that I'm only available this time frame. But I really wouldn't have any way of knowing that in advance. And frankly, it's going to partly depend on who else is out there. Because if the judge has 2 candidates and one of them's available only 7 weeks and the other one's happy to stay there for 12, you know, they may go with the 12. So that's really beyond our control. Okay, do you have, if Financial Aid or Career Center, anything else to add before questions from students? Okay, can we hear your questions? Go ahead. Loudly, please.
When you're talking about the federal district court judges, what would you consider as a high legal writing grade?
What would I or what would they? It just depends on, you know, to some extent on the pool of applicants. I would probably want it to be a B+ or higher, but it's also going to be affected by your overall GPA. You know, part of the problem with this is we're starting now. You won't even have your spring, you know, semester, let alone grades, and so you're basing it on one semester. But they understand that. So if you had really good grades and everything else, and that grade was a little low, that might be okay. But in general, as I said, they're looking for something in the neighborhood of 3.5 and sometimes higher. It just depends on what the overall pool of applicants look like. Yes?
If you apply to one particular clinic and you don't get anything, I mean, does that kind of leave you high and dry? Like, should you apply to multiple, or?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you asked that question because I forgot to talk about that. First of all, as I said, the civil placements, civil positions you're applying on your own, and then when you find something, you bring it to me for approval. When you're putting in an application and you want to apply for judicial and civil, and maybe there are going to be some in-house clinics that are also going to be listed on the application, you give an order of preference. So if you really want to do a criminal placement, you can put that as your first preference, and then your second preference is going to be for judicial. I'm not even going to see it until Professor Smith is, if she's unable to find you something, or you decide you don't want what she can get, then it's going to come to me. So we don't send out multiple applications in different programs. Again, we can't do that. We don't have staff to do it. It's too confusing. You are free to do that on your own if you want to. But otherwise, we're going to go in the order of the preference that you place on the application. Does that answer your question? Somebody had a...
Yeah, I have a financial aid question.
Sure.
Can you elect to not receive credit at all and just get work study for a clinic? And then alternatively, can you also, what does financial aid cover for the semester if you just elect to have credits? I mean, is it living expenses, the whole thing is just tuition?
Tuition and living expenses.
Same
I mean,
thing.
at that point, almost all of you are in the land of private loans as far as what you would get at that point. But it'd be living expenses for the summer or the period of enrollment and, the tuition cost.
I want to add one little, plea to this, your question or the answer. Although there are times when students apply through the clinic office and then get a placement and then turn around and decide they're not doing it for credit, they want to do it for work study or getting paid or whatever. We don't block you from doing that, but it is preferable, and we ask you, if you know that you're not going to do the program for credit, if you know that you're doing it for pay or you're doing it for work study or getting some form of aid or whatever, we ask you to please get your placements through the Career Center, through your own, through your own devices and your own efforts, because Professor Smith and I are actually faculty members. We really don't have a huge staff to do this, and it's hard for us to find all the placements and then have people just decide, well, I'm just doing this for financial aid. So, but I know that things come up at the last minute, and we are aware of that, so we would never block you from getting the money rather than the credit. We do ask you to be aware of the limitations on our resources in the clinic office and use other resources that are available. Yes.
Would you give credit for a clinical placement in another state like California?
Yes. And that's one of the reasons that but the seminar is still required, but that's why we front-end loaded the seminars, so that it permits you to be here for that time period and then you can leave town. But you do have to be here for that time period. Assuming, of course, that they're appropriate and satisfied, and the criteria are all spelled out in the manuals. Yes?
Is there a deadline for the requests for?
Well, I mean, before class starts, yes. Again, think about what happens to me on May 24th, okay? And particularly since my daughter's graduating on May 23rd, I won't be around. So yeah, as soon as you know, it's better to get it out sooner rather than later so that I'm not processing. During this past week, I approved about 20 or 30 new requests for approval for this semester. So it's a little hairy. Yes?
Are there any clinics that are specifically at night, working opportunities and also?
Yeah, if you're interested in night, at least the district attorney's office in Kings County here is open at night. It's not the entire office, and obviously you're not going to be doing the same thing that people do during the day. But they're what they call their complaint room and arraignments, where bail is discussed, etc., is open at night, and you can work at night.
I think it's hard. I mean, for the most part, that's not when there may be other. And if you read what's spelled out in the civil practice internship placements, some of them may indicate that that's a possibility, but it's not. There aren't a lot. Some of the in-house clinics, not this summer, but in the fall and the spring, will provide opportunities in the evening. Yes.
Is there any idea what the cost is, or what was it last year for the credits?
I think it was $1,000 even last summer.
So you could take up the
7 credits, I believe.
credits and
7,
7.
right. Other questions? Yes.
Do you get graded for the clinics, and if so, the grades?
The grade is pass-fail, or modified pass-fail. And in the summer, what that's going to be based on is you're going to get an this is always true, you're going to get an evaluation from your field supervisor. That we provide the form for the evaluation, they provide us with an evaluation, and then you're required at the end of the summer, there are certain reporting requirements, journals, this is, again, it's all spelled out in the manuals. Journals are required, a final essay is required. So all of those components are taken into account, and the grades are high pass, pass, low pass, and fail. They don't have any numerical equivalents, so they don't enter into your GPA, but they do appear on your transcript. Other questions? Last call for questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Good luck.